What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Early Edge NFL Pick Show, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Playoff time, and we got picks for every single game on Wild Card Weekend. Will Brinson, along with McClure, Larry Hartstein, and RJ White. See how that magically happened? You guys just showed up. I said your names. It's like Beetlejuice, except better looking. Only got 6 games. Got a whole show to fill. So let's take some different angles here when talking about the playoffs. And man, is there a better weekend than Wild Card Weekend? In addition, we got the college football playoff starting tonight, like Thursday Night Football. No NFL, but sure, we got a college game going on. Larry, when you think about betting on the playoffs, what changes for you versus the regular season? What sort of advice would you have for people out there who are looking to bet on the playoffs? Curious your thoughts, like specifically when it comes to this sort of format.
Well, you're going to see a lot of playoff trends thrown out there, like an underdog has won outright in this round 15 of the past 17 years. That's very interesting, but it doesn't really help you cap these specific matchups, or the double-digit underdogs don't usually fare well. You know, does that apply to this Steelers versus Ravens matchup is another question entirely. So I like to read about the trends. They're interesting to look at, but they don't affect the actual capping of the games.
Mike, your thoughts on playoff handicapping?
Yeah, just echo a lot of what Larry said, a lot of what we're all going to say here. And for me, it's just be careful with betting player prop overs. I know a lot of people like to bet overs on player props in general. Markets get pretty efficient, obviously, by this point, but game plans change a little bit. And just playoff football tends to play a lot different than some of the regular season action. So for me, especially when we're talking about secondary players, some of those middling players, you see numbers around 34, 36, 38, 40 yards that look super appealing. I would be cautious with some of that stuff, as those players typically don't see a lot of volume in these games. So if anything, if you're wanting to bet player props, look for more unders than overs in playoff football.
Well, I'm going to give you a few trends as we go on through this show, and I'm going to give you a few overs on player props. So you want to talk about how sharp these guys are. They're on a different level than I am. But what I would say is this applies to the regular season too, obviously, but don't take the worst of the number, especially when you know you're doing it. I'll use the Ravens game for an example. It opened at 8.5. People piled on the Ravens. It's up to 10 now. You don't want to take the Ravens at 10. If you think the Ravens are going to blow out that game, you want to find some different ways to attack the game. Mike likes to take some first halves, first quarter type of looks, team total overs and unders, depending on which side you like. Find different ways to attack the game, because that spread is the sharpest thing people are looking at. And if you get to it late, it's just not worth taking.
I think those are all great points, and agree with him completely. I think you also, when it comes to the playoffs for me, and I realize that this is, you can toe the line here a little bit in the sense like Ravens and Steelers, you're taking the points with the Steelers. I think you need to believe that an underdog can win outright in the playoffs if you're going to take the points with them. Maybe that doesn't necessarily always apply to if you get like a 15-point spread in the playoffs, it's pretty rare. That may be one thing. But like, if you don't think that an underdog can actually hang with the favorite and keep the game competitive, because this isn't a regular season game. And I mean, I know that those games matter a ton and that teams aren't letting their foot off the gas. But in the playoffs, it's like you are not going to take your foot off the gas at all. Like if the Ravens get up 10, they're not going to try to just like end the game and get out of there with a win. They're going to keep scoring because teams come back on you, all the time in the modern NFL. So I think you need to believe that a dog can win outright if you're going to back them. Otherwise, stay away. You don't have to take the favorite, but otherwise I think you stay away from that perspective. Any other thoughts from you guys on general playoff betting?
Yeah, to your point, Will, it's like, think about that Miami Buffalo game where Skylar Thompson started. Like, I think that was a 14-point spread. And you could look at a team like the Bills and say, well, I don't think that they are going to perform to that level to be able to cover that big number without thinking, I think Skylar Thompson's going to go out and win a playoff game on the road, So you can have that mentality with those big spreads, like you're saying. But yeah, for the most part, you look at these spreads, these 9-point underdogs, 10-point underdogs, you have to have a path for them to win.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you're going to back the Steelers, don't back the Steelers hoping that Russell Wilson can storm through the back door with a late touchdown to George Pickens. You back the Steelers because they've beaten the Ravens before and you think that they can beat the Ravens again. Would just be my general philosophy on that. All right, we got the games that we got to get to, including a pair of great Saturday action between the aforementioned Steelers and Ravens, plus the Chargers and Texans. Texans are home dog. The Texans play every Saturday on the first game of the playoffs every single year. This time, though, they're home dogs. Ravens are certainly not underdogs. Lamar Jackson coming off of maybe an MVP campaign. Can he hang it to the Steelers? We'll tell you next on The Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge NFL Pick Show Playoff Edition. Will Brinson, Mike McClure, Larry Hartstein, and RJ White giving you picks for every single game the wild card weekend, plus some betting advice in that first segment and some future action later on. So don't change your dial. Let's start. Chargers and Texans on CBS. The early game, the traditional Houston playoff game in which the Texans host a Saturday afternoon matinee playoff game like every year dating back to even like Matt Schaub's days. The Texans, though, this time, Larry, are not favored in this game, despite hosting it. They are 3-point dogs. I think they were like maybe a pick'em last year against Joe Flacco in this spot. They are 3-point dogs at BetMGM to the Chargers with a total of 42.5. Your thoughts on this game, and if you would lay the full 3 with the Chargers, you can find, if you shop around, I should note, some 2.5s out there.
I believe Joe Flacco and the Browns were slight favorites last year, went in there and got bombed 45-14 with some terrible picks, and C.J. Stroud played really well. And you see, what could look like a similar situation. You have a tired Chargers team playing its third straight road game. Will Quentin Johnston, will Josh Palmer be able to go? Those are 2 key receivers after Ladd McConkey that they really need to have out there, at least one of them. All of that said, I did lay 2.5 with the Chargers against the Texans, despite it being a bad spot, despite the Texans being disrespected. And it just goes back to look at the way the Chargers offense is operating with Justin Herbert. 23 touchdowns, 3 picks. He's able to run and extend plays that way. They get J.K. Dobbins back. They've been very effective with play action. And yes, it's a good Houston defense with a good pass rush, but I think he'll be able to make enough plays to get them to 21 or 24 points. And I think that's going to be enough against a Houston offense that has just tanked the second half of the season. Joe Mixon's efficiency is long gone. The run blocking is bottom 5. The pass blocking is below average. And guys, we saw C.J. Stroud only have 6 turnovers last year. This year, it's up to 14. Part of that is on the pieces around him, not having 2 of his top 3 wideouts, not having good protection. Part of it is he's just has regressed a little bit. And yes, the Chargers defense is not as good as the numbers indicate. Yes, the spread probably shouldn't be 3, but at 2.5, I'm going to trust the better coach, and I'm going to trust the much better quarterback.
Yeah, Larry talked about don't trust the trends earlier. Home dogs are 29-1 against the spread in the wild card round and 10-5-1 in the last 15 years. So I do want to take Houston +3, but it's tough. I couldn't quite get there for this show. Houston's offense is hard to trust without Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell. And the run game, not very good. Probably isn't good enough to get them to a bunch of points. So what I'm going to do is fade the Texans scoring 3 touchdowns, which they would have to do to get over their total of 20.5. Take them to go under 20.5 on their team total at -130. I think their defense can still lead them to a win and make it a lower scoring, a little bit more of a slugfest there at the end of the game, and maybe win a game like 19-17 type of thing, 17-16. But I'm going to trust that it's going to be more lower scoring, especially on the Houston side, and take their under on the team total.
RJ mentioned slugfest, lower scoring. That's what I see early in this one. The number in the first quarter in the NFL is almost always going to sit 7.5 here. I think we have a slower start. You mentioned the running game on both sides, as Larry did. Dobbins coming back for the Chargers. That certainly is going to put this team in a more neutral game script and not the super pass heavy that we saw for a few weeks. They're going to try to run the ball, particularly with the injuries they're dealing with. And then we know Joe Mixon. The efficiency hasn't been great, but they're still going to give him the football, especially early. I think we see conservative game plans, let those defenses work. And the fact that you're in a dome like this, it actually does mean we could see the longer field goal attempted there versus the aggressive 4th down call. To me, that's a positive note when we're talking about a first quarter total. I'm going to go under 7.5 here. I think it's very likely we see 0-0, 3-0, 3-3. I don't think we're getting a touchdown and an additional score here.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you got two good kickers when you talk about these teams. That might, the coaches might be willing to trust them. They know it's going to be a slugfest, lower scoring. Look, my thing here, and I'm on the same page as Larry. I'm going to take the Chargers. You can find the 2.5 out there. Obviously, you prefer the 2.5 to the 3. If you really need to, I suppose you could do Chargers money line, Ravens money line. I don't necessarily hate that. But the main reason I'm taking the Chargers here is because Jim Harbaugh, the dude wins. When he took over the Niners, he went to 3 straight NFC title games. He is, he has 3 losses in the playoffs. 1 was in overtime to the Giants. One is in the Super Bowl, and then the other was in that crazy, Richard Sherman catch, or Richard Sherman swats the ball away and then does the Aaron Andrews interview in the NFC title game. Like, Jim Harbaugh is 2-0-1 against the spread in Wild Card Weekend. The guy is a great coach. He's going to have his team prepared, and they're not going to go in there and do what Joe Flacco did last year and make a ton of mistakes. So I like the Chargers minus 2.5 here. Steelers at the Ravens on Saturday night, 8 p.m. at the M&T Bank Stadium. The Ravens have creeped up to minus 10 in this spot with a total of 43.5. RJ, do you think the Steelers can win? And if so, would you then back them as a plus 10-point dog?
I think they could. Their defense has given the Ravens trouble in the past. Ravens not going to have Zay Flowers in this game. It's a big part of the passing game. Missing. He's the first Ravens receiver ever to make Pro Bowl, right? So big loss for them there. I like them on the spread. Another trend, divisional underdogs are 10-4 against the spread in the playoffs since the 2014 season, the last 10 years. But I'll let Larry give the take on the plus 10. I'm going to also look at Lamar Jackson over 49.5 rushing yards, breaking Mike's rule here about going on overs. I think you do want to go overs on quarterback rushing numbers because they like to take it down, pick up the first downs, pick up the chunk yards needed, and carry their teams in that sense. Lamar has averaged 59.9 yards per game in the regular season in his career. That's up to 86.8 in the playoffs, with 5 of his 6 games at 54 or more. This is his time to run. He's going to need to do it to beat this Steelers team, I think, without Zay Flowers there to lean on and to pick up first down. So I like him to go over 49.5 rushing yards as well as the Steelers to cover the 10.
I like it. I'm going to go back to the same play here I just gave, under in the first quarter, and I'm going to be backing these and tracking them, and we'll report back, later in the season. But I like the under in the first quarter in almost all of these playoff games here, guys, and especially when you're talking about matchup number 3 in division with a Steelers defense that has given this Ravens offense trouble at times. And as you guys mentioned, you remove Zay Flowers from the equation, and you've got the big dog Derrick Henry. They're going to run Derrick Henry and run Lamar Jackson. I think that clock's going to be moving. And when you talk about the Steelers side, they do have an excellent field goal kicker. They're going to let Boswell kick a field goal if they get in range. So I think that they could move the ball but have trouble punching it in the end zone. They're not going to give you a line of 6.5 for obvious reasons. I'm going to go under 7.5 here until we start to see these numbers, populate at minus 135, minus 140, where I think they should be.
That 17-point win the Ravens had, that came with a pick 6. That came with Russell Wilson fumbling near the goal line. It came with no George Pickens, no Larry Ogunjobi, no Deshaun Elliott, no Dante Jackson, and Joey Porter, their top corner, left the game very early. So this is a healthier, much healthier Steelers team. All of those guys will be on the field. Divisional matchup, all the familiarity. I'm taking the points.
I am going with an anytime touchdown score, and if I'm looking down, it's because I'm checking my phone to see if the number has moved. It has not, which means that it's Mark Andrews, anytime score. It's plus 130 at BetMGM. You can shop around and find a little bit of a better number. I saw a plus 155 earlier today, and I think it's just kind of interesting, not that it necessarily matters. Zay Flowers ruled out, and that number didn't move. In other words, it sounds like the books weren't really planning on Zay Flowers playing in the first place. Mark Andrews has a touchdown in 6 straight games. Like, he's been the guy for Lamar Jackson. 30 targets in those 6 games, even though 4 of them, like the last 4, were complete blowouts. So Mark Andrews is getting the ball. They threw to him on Christmas Day from the 1 when you have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. This is a guy that has started to play really good football. He's Lamar Jackson's security blanket, and I think he's going to look towards him in the end zone when the teams are stacking the box to try and slow down Derrick Henry. So Mark Andrews, a nice little plus number there. We got some great games, including one on CBS between the Broncos and the Bills on Sunday. Josh Allen, will he run? He might Bo Nix, Jalen Hurts playing for the first time in nearly a month when the Packers come to town. Commanders, Bucks, Vikings at the Rams. A ton to talk about. We'll give you our best bets for these games coming up next on The Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge NFL Pick Show Playoff Edition. Will Brinson, Mike McClure, Larry Hartstein, and RJ White here to give you picks for every single game on Wild Card Weekend. And we got a quartet of games to get to. Well, 3 games, I guess, technically to get to for Sunday. One more on Monday as well with some, obviously bigger concerns going on in LA. But let's get to the first game between the Broncos and the Bills on CBS, 1 o'clock Sunday. Bo Nix makes his playoff debut in Buffalo. Lucky you. Congrats. You made the playoffs as a rookie. Here's the Bills and a bunch of snowballs. Bills are -9. Over under here, 47. Mike, any thoughts on this or perhaps the first quarter in this game?
Back to the first quarter here. Well, under 9.5. And again, look, this Broncos team, you're talking about a rookie quarterback making the debut on the road. Now, yes, a turnover could put me in a bad spot here. But let's assume that there's not a turnover and it's just a little bit of a slower start. I like this under. I think that the Bills are likely to go grab a touchdown, but I don't see it coming on a 40, 50-yard chunk play. I think they just march the football down the field. We see the clock running in this one. We probably don't get any first quarter points out of that Denver Broncos side, and you're looking at a 7-0 kind of game here. So the number is 9.5. I'm going to go under on this one. Again, I'm tracking the unders in the first quarter in the NFL playoffs this year. We'll see how we do on it, but I think we see by the next round, these numbers start to get a lot juicier at these numbers because you're not moving the number off of 7.5 in a lot of situations and 9.5 in a lot. So give me 9.5 under first quarter.
Yeah, well, Mike is on the first quarter unders. I'm on the mobile quarterbacks running, and I'm taking the over on both Josh Allen and Bo Nix here. Josh Allen at 40.5 rush yards currently at NGM, and Bo Nix at 25.5. Got these a little bit lower numbers on Wednesday, but I'm going to stick with that theme there, putting their bodies on the line to pick up chunks of yards and first downs. Allen has averaged 56.3 rush yards in the playoffs in his career versus just 37.3 in the regular season. And this is a tough passing defense, as we know. So I think there's going to be more of an impetus to pull it down, get those first downs, get those 8-9 yard gains to be able to pick it up on 3rd and medium, 3rd and long. And Nix hasn't hit 25 rush yards 8 times this season. In 6 of those games, Denver won by 10 plus. That's unlikely to be the script here. We're not going to see a game where Denver's winning this game by double digits. So I think he's going to be forced more to run and follow those scripts where he's running for 30, 40, 50, even more yards in some of these games. So I like both of these guys to go over their rush yard totals.
I like the Broncos with the points. Nix is a rookie, but what is he, like 27 by now? Played 1 million games in college, played a full season. And this Bills defense, according to Cleve Analytics, gives up the 2nd most drives to the opponent's red zone, and that's where they've been coming up with big turnovers, 4th down stops, missed field goals, etc. But it's not like you cannot move the ball against this Buffalo team. So we got perfect weather, about 28 or 30 degrees with no wind and no precipitation. That's about perfect for Buffalo this time of year. And you have a Broncos team that scored 24 plus in 7 straight. So I like the Broncos to score. Of course, I like the Bills to score. This is an elite offense, and the Broncos defense, we saw them give up a lot of points when they played the better offenses. But I'm thinking it's going to be around 31-24 Buffalo, something like that. And the Broncos get the cover. And the guy that I love more than anyone on Denver is the guy who's led the team in receiving yards the last 5 weeks, and that's Marvin Mims Jr. He has 4 more receiving yards, 341, than Cortland Sutton. He has 12 designed plays for him, a lot of screens. He's actually rushed the ball 12 times over the past second half of the season. So they're looking for ways to get him the ball over 44.5 combined rushing and receiving. I prefer that to over 40.5 or 38.5 in the receiving only, because I do think they might hand it to him as well.
I like it. I'm on the same thing as RJ. I've got Josh. Don't you love that, RJ? I've got Josh Allen over rush yards. You look at it. I looked at the attempts too, because it's 7.5. I mean, he's only failed to hit this number, and you can find as low as 39.5 out there in the market. He's only failed to hit that like 3 times in his career in playoff games, and he's got some astronomical rushing numbers: 92 yards, 88 yards. Went for 74 and 72 last year in the playoffs. So this is a guy that, when it gets cold, Josh Allen, and when it's playoff time, he is going to activate his legs, just like Lamar Jackson. He's going to run a ton, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him cash this on like one run, honestly. And I like the Bo Nix look. We saw Sean Payton use Bo Nix with design runs as well early in the season when he wasn't comfortable out there. Clearly, first playoff game, probably gonna be some jitters. Think they might get him out there and let him, use his legs quite a bit early on in that game. Let's go to the Packers and the Eagles. We got a real divide here on the panel for this one, which should be interesting to see. Larry, I'll let you start, and then RJ can follow as to why you guys like the Eagles.
I could only look at the Eagles side, assuming that Jalen Hurts is going to be, good to go. The Packers with perhaps an ailing Jordan Love. We know no Christian Watson. That really affects them in terms of what he does, creating space for all the other receivers. I think they're going to shut down Josh Jacobs. And the Eagles, to me, are a juggernaut that that are just kind of lying in wait, whereas the Lions are the number 1 seed. But to me, the Eagles are the more complete team on both sides of the ball, and they can man up those receivers. I see a quick exit for Green Bay.
Yeah, toughest spot of the year for Green Bay on the road versus what my top-rated team. I have the Eagles number 1 in my power ratings. We know that Green Bay team won't have Watson, like Larry said, no Jair Alexander, maybe some of these other defenders that have been banged up and missing games toward the end of the season. Philly offense can win the battle in the trenches consistently against this unit, I believe, and a fresh Saquon can extend the lead in the second half rather than sitting on the lead and waiting for the Packers to come back and cover if they're up, say, 10, 13 points, those type of things, trying to rally and get a cover there. And then you look at that week 1 meeting, Philly was -2 on a neutral in week 1. I'd argue that they're noticeably better than people expected right now as potentially the best team in the league, while Green Bay is about the same, and Green Bay has more injuries. So you throw in home field, I think this line needs to be a few more points, probably up closer to 6 than where it is at -4.5. So that's why I like the Eagles as the best bet.
I talked about not wanting to take a dog unless you think they can win outright. I think the Packers are going to win this game. And I'm glad to see that Mike is on this as well, because I'm going to let him provide a more, smarter approach to it. I'm simply going to point out that Jordan Love hadn't thrown a pick since Toyotathon started, and that we saw this guy come into the playoffs last year, get white hot against the Cowboys, and that was a Dan Quinn defense. It was a really good defense, and Jordan Love just got locked in. I know it's a different scenario. You're outdoors. The Eagles crowd is going to be just vile, angry people. And it's scary, right? But I think even without Christian Watson, Jordan Love's just going to do enough to find a way to win this game. I hate to even say it, but it's kind of a gut feeling here, Mike. Tell me you have some better statistical analysis to back us up here.
I do like the Packers side at 4.5, and you should only back dogs in this spot if you do think that they can win. Having said all that, I think it's still very likely the Eagles find a way to win the game. I just think the back door is going to be wide open here in the scenario where you get a 24-20 kind of game. And it really comes down stylistically, too, to the way the Eagles are going to want to play. I think the clock's going to be moving quickly there on both sides, because we've seen this Packers team, especially early in games, just hand the ball to Josh Jacobs 8-9 times on a drive. And I think that they're going to try to establish that as much as they possibly can. But the real question mark I have here for Jalen Hurts is, are we sure that he's not going to be a little rusty? He's essentially thrown 4 competitive passes in almost a month now. And the timing with those receivers who have also been in and out of the lineup had played with 2 additional quarterbacks now, not just the one. So that to me could be some cause for concern. We've seen some issues at times like that. So just looking at the way the game is being called, I know why it's not at 3. I mean, it would be 98% of the handle on the Eagles if this game was 3, but I do think it's kind of a field goal game either way. So the fact that you can get 4.5, just such a key spot, I'll take it with the Packers here.
All right, let's head down to Tampa Bay, where the Buccaneers are 3-point favorites against Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. Jaden, of course, making his playoff debut. The Commanders are surprised this season. Total here, the highest of Wild Card Weekend, 50.5, RJ. You got another running quarterback. Going to go back to the well?
Yep, sticking with the strategy over on quarterback rushing, especially with mobile quarterbacks like Jaden Daniels, taking him over 45.5 rush yards. Look, Mike said this was his favorite of my four, and so this is the one you need to go bet if you're going to bet it. And I trust what that guy says. He had 66 plus rush yards in 3 straight games prior to playing just 45% of the snaps in Week 18 with Mariota taking over. He averages 52.4 rush yards per game. I think that's the baseline where you started, is he's going to get to around 52. And I think an uptick in rushing opportunities is also likely too. So you can ladder that up. Mikey was saying, like, maybe he even gets to 100. I think if you take all 4 of the guys that I like, I think I'm going to hit 3 of them. So I'm probably not going to get all 4, but I'll take a 3-1 on these type of props any day.
I think you have a good shot, RJ, because I don't think the traditional run game is going to work against Tampa Bay. Number 1 in yards per carry against the last 5 weeks. Number 1 for the entire season in stopping early down runs. So I think Brian Robinson is not going to go anywhere against this Tampa defense. And then you would like to attack them through the air, but they're getting healthy in the secondary with Antoine Winfield and others coming back. So, yeah, Washington's been a great story. Tampa Bay is definitely vulnerable to the pass. But I just think this Bucs offense is going to have its way, especially Bucky Irving. When you look at the Commanders give up the most explosive runs in the NFL, I think it's going to be a really big day for Bucky Irving and enough to get Tampa over the line. I would love it a lot more, obviously, at 2.5, because I think it's going to be a very competitive game, but I could only be on the Bucs side.
Yeah, I think you're talking competitive game here. This is a lean on the Commanders side for me at the full 3 or 3.5. I made the number 1.5 here, and it's really just making kind of a manual adjustment, frankly, for how good I think Jaden Daniels can be in these particular spots. The ultimate weapon here for Daniels is his legs, as RJ talked about with that rushing prop. But he's such a young player, and he's had a little bit of injury concerns that you can understand why they've been cautious with him at certain times in terms of play calling. All of that goes out the window here at this point. He's the guy I want to back when you're talking about all on the line must-win game. I will also mention Austin Eckler in the passing game. I like his receptions over. I like an anytime touchdown there as well. I ultimately think they're going to trust him in this game as the lead running back just because you don't run the football on this Bucs team. So give me a lot of the Commanders at +3, but mostly looking at it because of Jaden Daniels and giving a real manual adjustment.
Yeah, I mean, Daniels could go crazy here. I think if he does, it's one of 2 ways. Either the Cliff Kingsbury and this Washington offense comes out with a different game plan than maybe we think they might have early on, or more likely to me, Jaden Daniels does all of his damage in the second half, which is why I'm taking the Bucs on the first half line. Washington's been terrible in the first half over the last month. They scored like 3.7 points, and their biggest first half was 14 against the Eagles, and they were trailing 21-7 at one point of that. And so I think the Commanders may be playing from behind here. I'll take the Buccaneers in the first half. A little scared of all the things that Jaden Daniels could do when it gets to be desperation time, and he's got to sort of create that magic. Monday night's game, the Vikings at the Rams. We should note that with this game, we don't know currently where it's going to be played. There are obviously, it's a horrific situation happening in Los Angeles with the firefighters going, working on those blazes and everything. Thoughts and prayers, everybody there. The NFL has said they still plan on playing the game in Los Angeles, but have already named the contingency plan to move it to Arizona, which is interesting because the NFL usually doesn't do that. But regardless, the Vikings, short favorite here, -1 at the Rams with a total of 48. I will quickly just point out that you know where I'm going here. This is a 10-unit whale play on the Rams. I mean, this is obvious, right? I mean, it's Matthew Stafford in the playoffs. Look, it's not very often you have a coaching advantage over Kevin O'Connell. I think the Rams have that. They have a quarterback advantage with Matthew Stafford over Sam Darnold. And I should point out, Stafford, 4 passing touchdowns, 75% completions, RJ. The last time these two, and 9 of 12 against the Blitz when these two teams played in the regular season. What do you think about my whale play?
I'm backing it. If Will's on a whale play, I want to follow it.
Yeah.
It's a can't miss situation. No, Rams won that first meeting by 10 points. Darnold actually had a very good game there too. He played pretty solid, and Stafford wasn't sacked once, and they still won by 10. Darnold coming off the stinker, back on the road against the defense, playing really strong football down the stretch here, allowed single digits in the last 3 meaningful games. Pseudo bye week also helps the Rams, if they get that rest there. Also can play the divisional hypotheticals at some books. My favorite is Philly -3 against the Vikings in case the Vikings win this game. I think the Eagles should be favored by a few points more than that. So look to those hypothetical matchups if you can get them.
I think it's so poetic that in our internal SportsLine futures competition, Will needs the Rams to win it all to take down that competition. But I agree with you guys in terms of the rest being very helpful for Kyren Williams, who had 23 carries for 97 yards, only had 13 carries in week 17, was totally rested. He's going to be a key factor because the Vikings are not as good against the run as their stats indicate. It's usually when they've been playing with the lead that they've been able to stuff the run. So I look for a nice game from Kyren Williams, and I lean towards the Rams as well.
I'm going to go the other way here on the island spot. I think the Vikings are being a little discredited for the way they lost that game to the Lions, and maybe some of the trends about how teams have performed after playing the Detroit Lions this year. But for me, the message is still clear. It's obviously a must-win game. This is one of the teams that beat you this season. Not many teams were able to accomplish that. But it's also about the baseline. This is a Vikings team that I want to back when they play indoors in a dome. This is a way easier game to go play than the Detroit game they just did. There's a very little home field advantage, even in the playoffs for this Los Angeles Rams team. It's as close to a neutral site game as you could possibly get in the NFL, in my opinion. And that's what I want. I think that Sam Darnold bounces back. I think they're able to get creative enough defensively. I'm not saying they're going to win this thing going away, but I think the number should be the 2.5 here, not the -1. So I like the Vikings side at -1.
All right. That is all of our picks for all of the playoff games. But wait, there's more. We got conference futures, Super Bowl futures. We got to talk about who's the best value to win the AFC title game, the NFC title game, and we will give that all to you coming up next on The Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge NFL Pick Show, playoff edition. Will Brinson, Mike McClure, Larry Hartstein, and RJ White. We gave you all of our best bets. RJ, by the way, I think I might round robin these quarterback rushing overs, right? You put all the running quarterbacks in a round robin, you hit them all, and we really cash something big. Speaking of cashing something big, let's try and cash some futures by looking at conference title picks. We'll start with the AFC. Now, I suppose this isn't technically like what we think our best value is, Larry. You can give a value if you want. If you think this team is just going to win it outright, by all means, fire away. Your thoughts on who wins the AFC and sort of some value there when you're betting on the AFC.
Well, mine is the same as the Baltimore Ravens, even though I think the Steelers will cover that number and lose by, in the range of a touchdown. I think the Ravens are poised to do this because of how it sets up. After they take care of the Steelers, they probably get Zay Flowers back. They most likely go to Buffalo, a team that they destroyed early and a team that can't stop the run, or at least the Ravens running game. So that's a perfect matchup for Baltimore. And then likely they go to Kansas City. And right now the Ravens historically, this is the third best offense in like the history of DVOA. That's how great they are offensively. And over the last 6 weeks, they've actually been a top 3 defense in the NFL when they made a lot of different moves in the secondary. So they are clicking, and I love them to go all the way and win the AFC. It's plus 300. To me, that's still some good value.
I think the best value play is actually the favorite here in the Chiefs at plus 140. I don't see them having any issue in the divisional round, and they should be favored at home in the title game. Their offense, I believe, is going to be playing much better in the playoffs than we saw for much of the season. So I think you're going to get value if you take them at plus 140 here, and then you look at that AFC title game and they're favored. And then maybe you take the team, whichever team they're facing, and maybe you can lock in plus odds on both sides and, get yourself a little bit of value there. You're going to get a payout either way. If I'm just picking a winner, I'm going to risk heartbreak and back my Bills here. They're might have to win a bunch of shootouts, but I think they're capable of doing so. Their depth at receiver this year is going to help this time around. Beating Baltimore and Kansas City back-to-back is going to be challenging. Like I said, I think the Chiefs are going to be favored in that rematch, but I think the Bills can go out and win shootouts if they need to.
Look, it's a homer pick on the Chiefs, but I actually like the way they're playing into this. You look at the offense over the last few weeks heading in, and they finally started to click again. And I think it's all correlated to just simply having Hollywood Brown out there. I think that additional weapon really benefits Patrick Mahomes. And we talk about Andy Reid often, guys, off of a bye. I like RJ. I don't see them losing that game at home, right? They get the bye, so they play one less game to begin with. You look at the opponent that's going to be in that game, outside of some sort of big upset with the Pittsburgh Steelers, like it's a game where I think that's a comfortable win for them. And as RJ mentioned, everything runs through Arrowhead Stadium here. They're going to be favored in that title game, no matter who it is. Absolute worst case scenario, it's an even money play. So yeah, give me Kansas City here, plus 140 or better.
I mean, you get a team that has to play one less game. Makes total sense to take Kansas City. And I think if the Chiefs had played better throughout the season, maybe they would be, like a minus number to win the AFC. But I don't care. I know what I picked before the season. I took the Buffalo Bills, RJ's Bills, to win the Super Bowl before the season. I'm not backing down now. Give me the Bills at plus 250. Look, they have Josh Allen. They you might have to beat the Ravens and then beat the Chiefs in back-to-back games. That's not easy to do. But if anybody can do it, Josh Allen can. And of course, get your heart ripped out in Arrowhead at the last second. That's typically how these things go. I will note that I think the Chargers number is like kind of sneaky, like stinky. 14-1 seems like low for the Chargers relative to the other teams. I would watch out for the Chargers if they get into Arrowhead in that second game. Let's head to the NFC. Mike, are you going to go with the chalk here as well?
I am. Look, the Lions are beat up defensively, but I was pretty impressed the way they handled that must-win game against the Vikings. The rest is certainly going to help them, and just playing in that building. They've been such a juggernaut, particularly offensively in that building. You can talk all about the defense and the injuries all you want. They're going to put 30 points on the board almost every time they take the field in that building, and it's just like you said, Will, it's one less game. Just because I think the Packers and Eagles could be a little sneakier, and then you talk about potentially a Vikings or a Rams team, and the Commanders and Bucks. It's just one of those, like, the threat to me is the Philadelphia Eagles, but the fact that you're guaranteed a home game, I think is a big deal here. One less game. I'll be on the chalk on the NFC as well.
Yeah, I actually do like the Eagles. They are my winner pick. They are my best bet as well. You can get them up to plus 350. I've seen they're the most complete team for me. I'd make them pick them at worst in Detroit. I think they are a couple points better than Detroit when you look at power ratings for me. Their only loss since week 4 was in Washington. Hurts played 16% of the snaps before exiting with injury. Philadelphia had 5 turnovers in all. Washington still needed a last-minute touchdown to win that game at home. So these Eagles team, I think, is just very strong top to bottom. And they're actually pretty good value if you can get plus 350 rather than doing the rollover money line play that it typically is better for you to do with these future bets, is just keep betting a money line and then roll it over and bet it again. You'll get more value in it. I think that's not going to apply to the Eagles because I think they're just on a different class from some of these other teams.
Yeah, and we've seen them go into hostile environments like Baltimore and just take the life out of the stadium with the way they run the ball, and eat up so much of that clock. I can see Jared Goff getting frustrated, waiting there on the sideline. I think it's going to be an amazing NFC title game, but I do like the Eagles to come out of it just because, like RJ said, they are the most complete team. That defense with that passing game and the running game, and the Lions, yes, they're getting a little bit healthier on defense, and Alex Anzalone was huge in that game, covering the tight end over the middle. I just think the Eagles, the more complete team, and will get to the Super Bowl.
Well, I think this is rude and unfair and dismissive of you guys to not even recognize that one of those teams won't even be playing in the NFC title game. Why? That's because Matthew Stafford and the Rams. And look, just to be fair, this is my preseason pick. Bills over Rams. Both teams made it to the playoffs. I'm sticking with it. You can get 12-1, maybe I think 15-1 we showed up there. Shop around, get the best number. The Rams looked like this in 2021 when they were, won the division, host a team that they're not favored, and all of a sudden they go on this run. If you're talking about a quarterback who can get white hot in the playoffs, it's Matthew Stafford. He gets laser locked in. Defense creates some turnovers. I think the Rams can make a deep run, and I like a Bills-Rams. We'll tell you who we like for our exacta Super Bowl picks next, but I can kind of hint at mine. I got the Rams to win the NFC, though. I'm not backing down from that. All right. Super Bowl picks, exactas. There's some, you can make some long shot bets on exactas with one team over the other before the playoffs. Who is the best bet to hoist the trophy in New Orleans. We will tell you coming up next on The Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge NFL Pick Show Playoff Edition. Will Brinson, Mike McClure, Larry Hartstein, and RJ White giving you our best bets for all the games, our picks to win each conference. And now, of course, as we embark on the journey to New Orleans and a chance to hoist the Lombardi Trophy, we've got to give you out our Super Bowl picks. But the beauty of gambling, the beauty of sports betting is you don't just have to make a pick and give a hot take with it. You can go out and find an exacta. Like, I don't know. Commanders over Chiefs pays a ton of money. Commanders over Texans like 600-1. Commanders versus Texans might be 600-1 in the Super Bowl. But the point being is by betting on the exactas, you get much bigger numbers than you would for just that team if you are confident enough. Larry, give me your exacta pick for Super Bowl LIX.
I'm taking the Ravens with the greatest offense that we've seen in the last 15 years over the Eagles, the most complete team in terms of both sides of the ball, plus 1,600 at BetMGM. But what I like is to throw on top of that is Lamar Jackson plus 700 to win Super Bowl MVP, because he's probably not going to get the regular season MVP, even though his numbers would indicate that he should get it. So when he gets to the big game, he doesn't even really have to put on a historic type of performance. If the Ravens win it, it's going to be Lamar Jackson.
Give me the chalk.
Sorry.
I'll go next. Give me the chalk on it. It's been the era of the chalk. Look, you talk about UConn, #1 overall seed, wins it easily. Boston, the unanimous favorite, wins it. Scotty Scheffler, unanimous favorite, wins everything. Maybe the markets are just finally getting efficient on some of that stuff, and we've had a better way of identifying the top teams. I like Chiefs over Lions plus 900. I will say I think you could actually roll this over, parlay those two on the money line every single week. The rest of the way, obviously, they get the bye because these teams are not going to be large favorites. They definitely have flaws, but they get the benefit of playing at home. So I think you can get an even better number on it, but give me Chiefs over Lions.
I'm going to take the Eagles over the Bills at plus 2,600. And actually, I don't mind taking the Eagles over each of the top three AFC teams rather than plus 700 to win the Super Bowl, because I would catch plus 1,600 at least if they're beating the Chiefs. So I think that's a good way to attack it. I think another good way to bet the Eagles title right now is take Saquon Barkley at plus 2,200 to win Super Bowl MVP where it is available. I think there's going to be some, if he wins the game, if they win the game, he's going to have a huge monster rushing game. And I think they're going to give it to him over Jalen Hurts. So I like attacking him on MVP. I also just really love taking Philly over each of the top three AFC teams because I don't see anybody else breaking through and joining that group.
All right, I dig it. I should point out, by the way, Larry, if the Eagles and Ravens meet in the Super Bowl, that will be the first ever all-bird Super Bowl between two teams with a bird mascot, which most people don't know. Fun fact. I'm going to stick with stick with who you brought to the dance, right? Bills over Rams. I said it before the season. Both teams made the playoffs. Both teams won their division. No, it's not the chalky thing. And I do think Chiefs and Lions would be an awesome Super Bowl. It is entirely possible. This is 60-1. You want to talk about a payday. And by the way, if you bet the Bills over Rams, exacta, and you trust me for whatever stupid reason, you trust me, you should also bet Rams over Bills before they get there, just in case. Like with these exactas, make sure and cover yourself if it's a longer shot on the outcome being different in the actual Super Bowl, because otherwise you would feel like a real putz if that happened. But I think Matthew Stafford gets white hot. Josh Allen gets white hot. Both guys make it to New Orleans, and Josh Allen comes away victorious. All right. By the way, Chargers at 28-1, kind of sneaky to win the Super Bowl. Jim Harbaugh just wins. That's all I'm saying. That'll do it for us. Pump for the playoffs. We'll be back next week to do it again. But for now, make sure to go check out the Early Edge, a daily SportsLine betting podcast on Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast, or scan that QR code. For RJ, for Larry, for Mike, I'm Brinson. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later.